Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. Today our subject is trade shows. Why should you go to one? Who should work on using them to develop more customers? And how to use them? Our guest is Carrie Hillenbrandt from the Albany Marriott. She's involved with trade shows and has been for a long time. Really happy that she's here to visit with us, and I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Again, my name's Carrie Hillenbrandt. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at the Albany Marriott Hotel here on Wolf Road. I have about over 10 years of sales and marketing experience in hospitality management. I'm also President-elect of the Northeastern New York chapter of Meeting Professionals International.
I kind of want to know more about what that is.
Meeting Professionals International is an international organization where our members all support the meeting industry. So what we have are anyone who supplies anything to the hotel industry. That can be hotels, that can be audiovisual technical companies, can be event companies, decorators, and then of course meeting professionals who actually book these meetings and events.
Okay.
So it's about a 50-50 membership between suppliers and planners, and we're just basically interested in growing our industry and in developing the industry. So that's our mission.
Fantastic. I first heard about trade shows, of course that's silly, I mean we all hear about trade shows.
Right.
I think maybe the thing that everybody hears about is a home show or a boat show, which are trade shows.
Yeah.
But in terms of thinking about what they should be and what they can be, I first heard about them in a class at UAlbany put on by Gerald Shea, Dr. Shea from the School of Business.
Okay.
And he was just saying these are so important to businesses, and this is how you can grow, and there's so many advantages. So I thought, oh, I need to know more about that.
Absolutely. We participate in quite a few regional shows, as well as a couple of national shows, and primarily business-to-business shows. As you mentioned, a lot of people are familiar with business-to-consumer shows, which would be your home show, your auto show, and that sort of thing, and those are really great to attend. Certainly a different type of show than that business-to-business show. The business-to-business shows, I think that they're a little bit more defined. So if you're looking to grow your business, you can get a lot more information about who the attendees are going to be to that type of show.
Okay.
So we do some regional associations. We do the State Society of Association Executives. We do their show. So that's going to pull planners from around the region who are our customers. We also do a couple of national shows, such as Teams, which is actually a huge trade show which brings in athletic directors and planners that basically plan sporting events. It could be anything from, you know, a youth hockey tournament to Special Olympics or something of that nature. And as you know, here in Albany, we get a number of sports events here. So we do participate in that. And then, of course, Meeting Professionals International has their big show, and they have that twice a year. So generally, these are large association conferences that then add on a trade show to open up the marketplace for business-to-business sales. So,
One of my guests once introduced me to the term ecology from a new point of view, and it had to do with nanotechnology and understanding what they do down there. But he explained it in terms of all the interrelated people that it takes to make this work. And that's the kind of a feeling I get when you talk about a trade show that brings all the people together that actually even do trade shows.
Yes, absolutely.
Could you give us a couple other examples of trade shows that you've been involved with?
Yep. Prior to being at the Marriott on Wolf Road, I also worked at a Marriott resort in South Florida. So that gave me a lot more exposure to bigger shows because it was a bigger facility. And of course, it gave me an opportunity to exhibit with Marriott as a brand. So some of these larger shows that you go to, what you'll see is you really have a choice. You can look at partnering with your destination city, whereas here in Albany, I might partner with the Albany Convention and Visitors Bureau to bring people to Albany as a destination.
I see. So it's a public-private, possibly, partnership?
Yeah, you can really look at partnering. It depends on what your objective is and what you plan to get out of doing the show. As far as when I was at the resort, it made a lot of sense to partner with other Marriott resorts as a brand and to go in with them and, reserve the Marriott aisle. So you're in there and you're with, the Harbor Beaches and some of those other destinations, so that when you have a planner who's looking for a resort, they can go to that area and talk to multiple resorts.
Okay.
So it really depends. It really depends on the show and what your product is when you go to choose the show that you're going to do.
Well, that kind of gets us to a question. Why should somebody go to a show? And I'm trying to get at things that people maybe wouldn't think about without a little bit of help. Some things that they could get out of a show. So why should someone be interested in a trade show?
Well, from a meeting professional perspective, a meeting planner to attend a trade show has at their disposal, hundreds of destinations that they could go to for their event. So it gives them face-to-face time.
Without flying all over the country.
Flying all over. It's not going to replace going and having a site inspection at a particular facility, but it is going to allow them to meet the salespeople that they would be working with at a particular destination.
Because they can't fly all over the country looking at every destination.
You can, and you can spend a lot of time and money doing that.
Okay.
Or you can just go to a show, and sometimes aisles are broken up by destination, so you might say, I know that my association conference, my attendees want to go to Florida next year. So I'm going to go down the Florida aisle and see everything that Florida has to offer. South Florida, North Florida, do I want to do Disney? So it really gives the planner a lot of exposure to different areas. It also gives them that face-to-face time, which is so important with the salesperson that's representing that facility. It's when it comes down to negotiations and working on hotel contracts and things, for them to have that face-to-face connection, nothing's better. It's great to have that networking time, and it's so important to get that connection that you don't get over the telephone.
Now we have a number of trade shows locally, but they're trade shows taking place all over, I was going to say the U.S., but all over the world, depending on what you're doing. I know some of our nano people at the university go to China and Germany and everywhere.
Right.
So I guess those people really understand that when you want to meet and network and learn about other opportunities, a trade show brings it all together.
It does, and it's not just networking with the customer, it's also networking with your peers, which is also important. Trade shows can be obviously extremely costly to go to when you talk about nanotechnology, and they're flying to Germany and China and all over.
And they take teams.
Yes, it's a huge investment. So certainly I would recommend, as you scout out shows for the year or things, if you don't have experience in trade shows, you're going to want to pick a few shows that, obviously are specific to your industry, and request an exhibitor prospectus from the organizer. And that should give you some really great information about who the attendees are, what's their buying power, what's these, really profiles the people who are registering to come through. And that will help you to decide whether that's a good investment for your company.
In terms of variety, I'm aware that there's a tremendous variety of trade shows because once
every association has a conference and a show.
Everything has a trade show. We have a book downstairs, which is an international directory of trade shows we get every year. And there are thousands and thousands of trade shows.
Sure.
So no matter what you do, it seems that...
Exactly. So you really want to do your homework and your research for your industry to see where you're going to get the most bang for your buck.
And whether you want to network, I guess, with your customers, in other words, let them come to you, or whether you want to learn about your field or your suppliers.
Exactly. I like to look at where my competitors are going to be exhibiting.
And how do you know?
Well, I can look to see if they had exhibited last year.
Okay.
I have professional relationships through, Meeting Professionals International, where I can just ask, some of my peers, hey, did you go to this show? How was it? What did you get out of it? Did you think it was a good show? And that's okay. I think that's, again, networking within your industry, that's helpful. I think it's important to set some clear objectives before you send your check in to any particular show. Again,
Okay.
It's a sizable investment. So what you really want to do is make sure you do your homework ahead of time and decide what is your objective. Is it to get more customers? Is it to get more actual sales? Or is it to just give your destination exposure? Or what are you looking to accomplish at the end of this to see, was it a good return on my investment?
Right. We have a library trade show, and so I'm mostly familiar with that. And there are products that help us with our scheduling and
Sure.
things that manage our internet service and vendors that
Yes.
sell us books. So in every area where we actually have to purchase something,
Right.
there's somebody there that we can talk to.
Absolutely. And it's great. You can accomplish so much in a day as an attendee. You can hit all of those.
Now, how do we know not only which one we go to, but how do we know, for example, is a large trade show better than a small trade show?
Not necessarily. I think it depends on the market that you're coming from and what your product or service is. I mean, certainly it wouldn't make sense for me to head off to a show that is going to attract, planners that book incentive travel for pharmaceutical companies.
Okay.
Well, they're probably not going to opt for Albany as a destination.
Okay, so
they're
pick-
looking at Mexico and fancy resorts and golf courses. Well, I don't have a golf course, so
Right.
I really want to look at the profile of the attendee, not necessarily the size of the show, to determine what would be best for us.
Now, how do you know if it was even successful? Let's say you've gone to a show. How do you say, okay, I'm back? Was it worth it?
Right. Well, certainly I'm always looking at that as the director of sales. If one of my salespeople wants to try a show, that's going to be my first question. Well, how was it? What did you set out to accomplish when you went to the show? It may have been, I just want to go and network and see, what kind of people are there and see if it makes sense to continue those relationships and go back a following year. It may not be realistic to think you're going to come away from a show with actual sales.
Right.
But some prospects, some really good prospects, that's a great thing. If you're coming away feeling like, you made some good connections, you don't have exactly the business per se booked, but you feel like you've made some relationships and through networking.
And some you wouldn't have made otherwise.
You wouldn't have met, these people otherwise. Then that could be considered successful.
Right.
So you really have to determine ahead of time what you're going to be happy with as far as an outcome.
Now,
and
when you come
evaluate.
back, I assume you have a list of people who
Yes.
gave you a business card, and some you talked to, and some just threw them in a
Right.
bottle. What do you do with that?
Well, when I'm at a trade show, if I start a conversation with someone and I think this is a really valid prospect for me, I'm going to go ahead and take their card and make some notes.
So it's not just
so
another
that
name.
No, exactly. You definitely do get, the attendee list and you get the dump-in of business cards. But you really need to take the time to make a few notes while you're engaged with that person. Because when you get back, it's hard to remember all these people
Right.
that you met. So you want to make a couple of notes maybe on the back of their business card to keep your memory fresh. And follow-up is so important. It's really important to get back to these people right away. I actually talked with a trade show trainer, per se,
Oh, that's good.
at one point, who said to me he likes to, when he gets to the airport, he pulls out all the business cards
And
that he wrote
he hasn't
notes
even
on.
left to go home yet.
He
you
hasn't
say.
left to go
Okay.
home yet. He has postcards that he brings with him to the event. And then he sits at the airport and addresses them all and mails them from the city that he was at,
And it's
the
still
trade show.
fresh in his mind.
And these attendees get home, go to their mail,
Wow.
and within a day they have a postcard from this man. And if you look at where he sent it, it's from the city that they met
Ah.
in. So That's
well,
pretty
that
impressive.
probably makes a good, yeah, exactly.
It makes a
good
great impression.
This
and it
person
really,
is following up.
Exactly.
And if they follow up on their product, maybe.
Exactly, yeah. So I thought that was a really neat technique.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see. We looked at why you should go.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at the follow-up. But let's look at when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's back up a little bit before we look at, okay, somebody's walking up to us. How do you prepare for a trade show?
Well, there's quite a bit involved. Generally, at least with the hotel, we have a booth and we have sort of the standard setup
So
that
you've done
we
it
go
so
with.
many times.
Right. We already have our promotional materials and everything sort of packed and ready to go, so that we have consistency with our booth at each show. As far as preparing customer-wise,
Okay.
one of the things that you can do, which is really great, is a pre-mailing. So you can get a list of attendees who are registered to attend the trade show ahead of time. And you can actually do a pre-mailing that tells the attendee where your booth is located. You could put an offer out if you stop by booth, whatever, we're giving away a trip or something to entice them to come by the day of the show.
But certainly
that's a
you
pre-mailer.
would let them know exactly what their product is, and
Oh, yeah.
hopefully, hopefully they could see, oh,
And
this might be
encourage them to
something I
come
would
by.
be interested in.
Exactly. It generates some pre-excitement over the show and hopefully draws them to your booth when you get there. So that's a nice thing. Also, if you have a database of customers that are in the area of where you're going to be exhibiting, actually inviting them to the show and telling them that you're going to be there, and even your booth location. So if it's a big show, they know exactly where to find you.
Right, we've been to some large ones where after 7 aisles and you're running all over, you don't even know which side you came in on.
Right, you're confused and
You're
turned
confused.
around. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that's always helpful.
Now, we know that people should follow up. We know that it's better to be proactive and to get mailing lists. Is there any advice in terms of not being too shy but not being too pushy?
Yeah.
Can you turn people off? I mean, sometimes
Sure.
I feel like I want to respect these people. They're selling products, and I'm
Right.
busy right now. So even though maybe I even need it, I don't want to talk to anybody.
Right.
How do you make these calls?
Right. Well, I think one of the mistakes that people make when they're exhibiting is they tend to look at a show as, first of all, it's a lot of work. You're on your feet all day. So they might say, oh, I'm going to send the rookie to the trade show for the day, which can be a mistake. You want to make sure whoever you are sending is really properly trained to greet people, to ask a few key questions to sort of evaluate that prospect, to engage that person and see, is this a legitimate, prospect for me, or are they interested in what I'm giving away, or
Right.
are they just being polite? So, a good salesperson is going to be able to ask a few key questions and greet and
that takes experience, right?
yeah, just experience. And obviously, you don't want to prejudge people who are, approaching your booth. You can't tell whether they're necessarily a valid lead for you or prospect until you have a chance to engage them and talk a little bit.
That's good.
So I think it's important that whoever you do send to the show, it's a sizable investment. Make sure that you send your best.
Or at least a best with the rookie, so that he's got something
Some
to learn
training,
from.
right? Exactly.
Now you mentioned giveaways, and you mentioned perhaps you would be able to give something away,
Right.
An iPod or something
Sure.
interesting. How do you manage that in terms of, you don't want people just coming to your booth saying, where's the ruler, or where's the iPod, or
Right.
and then rushing off. So how do you manage that to make
Right.
it, to get some bang for your buck?
Well, it's tricky. I've seen people manage it both ways. I've seen people have, really great trinkets that they sort of held on to until they got to a point where they felt like, here's a valid prospect, I'm going to give them my trinket.
Okay. They have to earn it.
Right. I've also seen the approach of, you know what, this is advertising, this trinket or this tchotchke or whatever it is that I'm giving away has my logo on it. That's fine. Go ahead,
Right.
and really are fine with that. And there's always the trade show attendee who, isn't there necessarily to educate themselves and learn about all these products and services. It's to get all of those items.
Okay.
And usually you can spot them pretty quickly, and
So
you don't want
kind
to
of-
spend a lot of time with that person if.
So yeah, are there some people that just like to talk? And, you might have people walking
sure.
around, and eye contact is so important.
Sure.
But somebody is just monopolizing you.
Yeah.
How do you get rid of them?
Well, it's a typical, I guess, sales technique or sales call. You just, want to thank them for stopping by and, move on.
Right, right.
Yeah, so it can be a little bit tricky. It can definitely be tricky, but again, I've seen that, I've seen it done both ways. I've seen the people who really hold on to their giveaways and really pre-qualify, and then the people who have the opposite approach where, hey, take it, go ahead, move on.
So there's not necessarily a right answer.
There isn't. I think
Maybe
it
try
depends.
both ways.
I've seen both ways be successful. I could actually give you a good example. When I was in Houston at Meeting Professionals International a few weeks ago, I wasn't exhibiting, but I was walking the floor as an attendee because you get a lot of good ideas from other suppliers. And there was a unique boutique hotel that had a pretty swanky looking booth, but I was walking by and they had these really funny big rubber rings that blinked lights.
So that got your attention.
Okay, so I noticed people were walking around the trade show floor with these blinking lights. Where did you get that? That's so interesting. Oh, over, at this hotel. So I walked by and checked it out, and they right away, here's a ring for you. And I said, well, I'm a hotel supplier, so I'm very courteous of the fact that I don't have any business for you. I don't want to take your marketing materials. And she said, no, it doesn't matter. Here, I want you to have this. And here's an invitation to our hotel is, maybe 10, 15 minutes from the convention center that you're in. And we're having a cocktail reception, an open house. We want to give hotel tours. And so come by between 5:30 and 6:30 this evening for our open house. And I said, again, I'm a supplier.
Right.
I'm not going to be.
Probably not going to come.
Nope, but obviously a lot of planners and customers who might ask you about Houston someday. So, why don't you come by? Well, I was so impressed by that. I said to my colleague, we're going here this evening for happy hour. So we get in the cab and we head out, and we're driving. Houston's pretty spread out. And I thought, there's going to be nobody at this event because it's too far from the convention center, and the conference is at the convention center. Well, we got walked into this hotel, and it was full of people from our conference.
Wow.
So they obviously accomplished what they wanted, which was to draw people from this trade show to their actual facility.
It's amazing.
And they were successful at it. And it was a great, tour of the hotel. And we ended up staying and having dinner and spending some money in the restaurant.
That's
so,
exciting.
That's a good example of someone who said, it doesn't matter if you're directly buying from me, I'm going to leave you with a good impression, and you're going to tell people, which is what I'm doing right now. So.
Yeah, you remembered it a long time.
Yes, yeah.
And the blinking thing, it sounded like they were very creative in what they chose.
It
so
was eye-catching, and sure, it did. People were, wow, what is that? Where did you get that?
And there's their name again.
And then they had a follow-up of, we're having this reception later tonight. And as a result, they drew all these people to an inconvenient location.
So very good.
So very good.
Well, let's see. What's going on, I guess, in terms of technology? You mentioned this before, and you said, let's bring that up.
Sure.
We were going today to go and have a meeting, but instead we did email.
Right.
Now, email doesn't come close to a conference. So what can media do in terms of a trade show? What can you do to enhance communication and?
Well, there's recently, actually, through MPI, I was shown an example of a virtual trade show. I had never seen anything like this before, but it looks to be, on the horizon. It's really neat. It allows you to, as an attendee from your desk, go onto a site and actually be an attendee and walk a trade show floor. And it's really neat. You can turn, you can go and stop in different booths to get information. And then the exhibitors can actually have presentations loaded that they can show you. Yeah, you walk around the trade show floor as if you're, at a major show, but you're sitting at your desk. The graphics, the visuals are unbelievable. I don't see it ever taking the place of a face-to-face meet and greet, because
Right.
that's so important. But it could, under certain applications, be really beneficial cost-wise,
Well, there's a limit to
time-wise.
how many trade shows we can go to, how many conferences we can go to.
Exactly. That's right. It takes a lot of manpower. So one of the uses that we were going to look at is to have this built for our membership here locally in the form of a job show or a job trade show, basically.
Okay.
So that us as exhibitors in hospitality, hotels, and restaurants can actually post on our exhibit booth what positions we have open in our hotels, in our restaurants, and then attract culinary students, hospitality and tourism students to log in and to visit our show, and they could go around from booth to booth, ask questions, post their resume at different sites that they might be interested in working at, and it would be like a career fair, job fair. So for our industry specifically. So that's something that we're working on in the next week or two.
That's right now.
That's right now, yeah.
It's kind of interesting
So-
because I think sometimes meetings are difficult to do electronically when a lot has to happen at the same time.
Right.
If you had 100 people and you were trying to have a communication system, that would be seems unwieldy, but
Right.
it strikes me that a trade show, it's like a little village.
It is like a village,
And
yeah,
so-
it's like a marketplace.
So,
village.
and there are computer systems now, I've never used them myself, but you read about where there's a Second Life or something it's called.
Right.
It's almost like a trade show.
Right. It's like
That's
a whole
kinda neat.
nother virtual, marketplace. So it's a really neat application to think about. Again, I don't think it will take the place or have the same benefits as a face-to-face meeting. Obviously, there's so much you can pick up between, body language and
Right.
making that human connection. I think is still so
And giving
important.
away little shiny...
And giving away little trinkets. Yeah, that's very important. But I do think, the application that we're looking at, that initial, contact with a potential hospitality and tourism student, works around their class schedule. They can get online in the evenings or, whatever time works for them
Okay.
and still talk with us. So.
And so I think we should probably be looking at that and see what we can do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The technology's out there. There's people who build these sites.
We're getting close to being out of time. Let's kind of turn it around a little bit and look at the Marriott and what you do just for a
Sure.
moment. If there was a business that felt like, okay, I want to have a trade show, or maybe it's a local organization. Now they could contact you and you would help them?
It really depends. We can partner as far as helping that planner to plan their event.
Okay. And it may or may not fit into...
It may or may not fit into our business model or
Okay.
what we need as far as our facility goes. Trade shows can be difficult. I've seen people try to put them together and not have them be successful. It's a big undertaking. Certainly a lot of work to gather. You need to put together an exhibit prospectus. You need to sell your show and get people to buy into,
Okay.
purchasing these booths. So there's a lot out there.
So I guess you either build up the knowledge or you hire somebody
Right.
who has done
Right.
trade shows, and that person already kind of knows how to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's really
And that's why
finding
where
a
you
meeting
come in.
professional. Exactly. Now, certainly our facility can host trade shows, but it would have to fit in with, what we're trying to accomplish as far as selling the entire hotel, the
Right.
sleeping rooms, and food and beverage, and
Right.
exhibit space. So, that can be a little bit tricky. My advice to a business who wants to, create a trade show and sell it is to get a meeting professional to work for them, to hire a meeting professional that's expertise is in trade shows. There are
Right.
so many facets to it, everything from, liability, shipping and receiving, depending on the facility, you might be dealing with union contracts.
Telephones.
Phone lines, wireless connections, there's just so many
that
things
you won't think about. Yeah.
that you just don't think about that a meeting professional is accustomed to doing. And there's certainly a lot of software out there too that can help you to plan. You know, some of these high-end shows are at a point where you can actually, as an exhibitor, go to the site and you can actually pick your booth location and reserve it online. You can see the layout where your booth is going to be on the floor.
So it sounds like that would be something you would want to do as quickly as possible. If you're the last booth to go to this trade show.
Yes, usually you make out better the earlier you register.
So that sounds
as far
like good
as
advice
location.
there.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what if you get bad location?
That happens.
How do you manage that?
That happens. Well, what you want to do when you get to your site and you look at your location is you really want to approach your booth from an attendee perspective. Walk down the aisle, you know, toward your booth and look at your visuals. Do you have things turned in a manner that would be eye-catching to your attendee? So you really need to look at it from that perspective. You know, sometimes there's just not a great location and there's not a lot you can do about it. But again, that's the trained salesperson that you put in that position where they can kind of walk out and maybe greet people and draw them in to get them to come visit you.
Right.
So I've seen that.
And that would be the more difficult thing to do. So you really do need an experienced salesperson to not feel that they're being pushy.
Absolutely. I've also seen exhibitors, their booth location was maybe okay, but the show organizers may have planned a beverage station next to them or something that bottlenecked the flow of traffic in front of their booth.
And maybe there's noise
Right. So anything can happen. There's a lot of variables. I did see that happen to a show attendee in December, actually, and they handled it so well. They went to the show organizer and said, you know, look at what's happening. People can't get to my booth because you have a beverage station here and traffic is bottling up and, you know, what can you do? And they actually had a staff come in, move the bar and resituate. So again, as an exhibitor, you're the customer, you're paying for the show, you know, make sure you get exactly what you want.
That sounds like really good advice. So you really have to be alert to the situation and don't assume something is hopeless.
Exactly, yeah. You're still the customer.
Well, thank you so much. I've been wanting to talk about trade shows for a long time. I think people really need to look at them as an option, not only suppliers and customers, but in so many dimensions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope you enjoyed this show. Hope you watch us next time, and have a great week. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.